Hello and welcome, everyone. I'm Allison Mills with ESIP, the Earth Science Information Partners, and we're gathering here today for our 2024 January ESIP Meeting Highlights webinar. So we're going to run through some of the different events and sessions and plenary breakouts. It's really great that we get a chance to highlight so many different perspectives and kind of recap what you may have seen and heard, or maybe what you didn't actually get a chance to see at the January meeting. So you'll hear from staff, session organizers, and our ESIP community fellows. We invite you to get involved in one or more efforts that you see highlighted here, and we hope that this event motivates you to do so. So this webinar is being recorded and will be posted to our ESIP YouTube channel. If you have questions or comments at any time, feel free to drop them into the chat. Our presenters will keep an eye there and answer any questions that you might have. So to move things along, so here is our ESIP vision. ESIP as an organization hosts 2 large conference-style meetings each year in January and July, and they're opportunities for individuals and for organizations to connect and collaborate, working across sectors and across the data lifecycle. So this is all part of our vision, which is a world where data-driven solutions are a reality for all by making Earth science data actionable by all who need them anytime, anywhere. That is what we are here for. And as a piece of that, this year our theme is really digging into grounded in trust. And so we're really looking at how data ethics empower collaboration. So as a community of thinkers and leaders around Earth science data, we are dedicated to making data more discoverable, accessible, and actionable for others. So we have a long history of tackling technical challenges that still have a human dimension. And the ESIP meeting, which was held virtually from January 23rd to the 26th, was an opportunity to continue and to accelerate some of these efforts. And so here's kind of like what it was by the numbers. The great thing is that we always have a great number of first-time attendees at our meeting. That's one of the things that we definitely like. In total, we had 217 total attendees, and the meeting featured 3 plenary sessions, 21 research showcase presentations, a number of breakouts, and many organizers and speakers. So I'd just like to take a moment and thank everyone. It definitely takes a community to pull together one of the ESIP meetings. So you're going to hear highlights from several of these. Actually, not even several. You're going to hear a lot of highlights today, which we're very excited about. So just to cover kind of how the meetings themselves work, to optimize our meeting experience, especially for the virtual setting, we really want to make sure that we get as much input and collaboration as possible. So we've leveraged a number of tools, which include Slido, KikoChat, Zoom, Sketch, the ESIP Figshare repository, and the whole Google Suite. So in addition, our breakout session organizers take part in session facilitation training, which is led by the fabulous master facilitator, Charlie Haley, ahead of the meeting to help everyone support their planning process. And it makes our ESIP meeting sessions a little bit more engaging and interesting. Interactive is one of our key words. All right, so today we have asked our presenters to contribute their presentations to the ESIP Figshare portal. So this is one space if you wanted to dig into slides or some of like the deeper information, some of the tools and resources shared. And you can check out the URL, which is at the bottom of the slide here. And that's where you'll find also many of the research showcase presentations as well. You can also find and access content at the Sketch site. This is also where we have all of the links to each of the docs that we create for every single session. So at the top of the Sketch site, you'll see the link to the YouTube playlist. And that's got all of the recordings and the link to the Google Drive folder, which then has all of those session docs as well. So find the day of the session if you're looking for one in particular, and then you can kind of get into the nitty-gritty details from there. All right, so here is our YouTube playlist. We're very happy to say that we make our meetings as open as possible. And so we're we're really committed to making sure that we can get as much of this content out, even if people aren't able to attend the meeting in person. So definitely check out the playlist. This will also be going up on our website, which we are in the process of overhauling. So stay tuned. And without further ado, we are going to switch over into our plenary highlights. And first up, I believe we have Denise covering the opening session.
Thanks, Allison, so much for setting the stage. And I also, before I get started, I want to give a big shout out to the ESIP staff for all they do to make not only our big collaborative meetings happen so smoothly, but also the day-to-day behind the scenes work of helping ESIP folks do what we want to be doing. But I'm here today. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Denise Hills. I am currently ESIP's president. And I'm so pleased to give you a little bit of a highlight summary of our opening plenary. Susan Shingledecker, our executive director, started us out by talking about our meeting theme of grounded in trust, and asked us questions like, what does trust look like? What is trustworthy? And talked to us a little bit about how we often feel like imposters when we're talking about trust and data ethics. Ethics are hard, and sometimes it's hard to see the presence of ethics, but the absence of such can really be much more obvious and urgent. That's one of the reasons we need to talk about it and be engaged on it. And we had a little bit of a discussion on ethics versus responsibility. We often default to, I'm not the expert, so who is? Just because you're not an expert doesn't mean it doesn't affect you. And we have a responsibility to behave ethically. Therefore, we have to get comfortable with that discomfort that comes with addressing ethical questions directly. And so Susan's discussion really was a great setup for our main plenary speaker, John Havens, who spoke on the year of being awkward for purpose. It was probably a little bit different than things that we were expecting. He shared a lot of his own personal struggles and how we don't talk about that, our personal struggles in our professional life. But these struggles are really fundamental to who you are, and the discomfort of sharing those types of things, can lead to a really profound sense of social isolation if people don't get the support they need. And we sometimes default to, I'd rather let people suffer and die even, including myself, than identify how to proactively care for myself and others and start trying. And that leads me to kind of my second point. Avoiding all risk is equivalent to sitting in an empty room and doing nothing. And kindness is also being aware of your privilege. It's easier to be kind when you are doing well. And recognizing that, embrace your privilege and take care of it. We wrapped up our session with a panel, which included myself, Douglas Rao, who is our vice president, Ruth Dewar, who is our finance chair and a member of the board, and Steve Diggs, who is our newly appointed EDIJ chair. And we had a discussion on kind of what both the prior speakers had said before. One of the big things from that was ethics is not the same as ideals or ideology. So we need to keep that in mind as we're playing with that, as we're talking about data ethics. We may not be the data ethics experts, but we're still affected by those data ethics. We need to balance the ethics of data openness with the ethics of data privacy. And that leads me to kind of my fourth takeaway. Community needs should be at the center of our thoughts around data and data ethics. We need to ask the questions, what are the restrictions? What are the limitations? What are the known biases? Who could this hurt? Who does this help? Ultimately, trust is the key for data ethics. Trust is not something built quickly, it takes time. So even with the urgency of what we see is needed, the effects of climate change, natural disasters, to be ethical and have ethical data, we need to move at the speed of trust. Thank you.
Thank you, Denise. Up next, we've got uh, Annie, hopefully. I don't know if my screen just totally went blank. I don't know if that happened for anyone else. Yes? Okay. Well,
Sort of see some triangles. You might need to refresh it, maybe.
well, it looks like it's just I will figure that out. You start talking, Annie, and I'll make it happen.
Okay, great. Well, lovely to see all of you. During the ESIP Lab plenary, we had a member of each of our most recently funded ESIP Lab projects present. Each project outlined their value proposition and what they intended or what they set out at the beginning of their projects to learn throughout their 6-month development cycle, which I think those learning highlights were a particular highlight. 6 of those projects, they stood up and they bravely said to an audience of near 200 what they didn't know how to do at the beginning of their project, and then what they were able to learn throughout the course of their project. Those learning objectives were everything from knowing more about GitHub Actions to learning all about an ecosystem services model that they had never used before. I also outlined in that plenary as the ESIP Lab director that we are in the process of creating our next RFP and are interested to hear any community input on what potential themes for that RFP could be. And I'd just like to leave you with a quote that you can see on the side and the sort of impact that the ESIP Lab has on our community and what this sort of intentional learning objective does for our awardees. So I'll just go ahead and read it. And this was an email that I received from one of our funded project PIs. I just wanted to reach out and thank you and ESIP for putting together small grant opportunities like this. It has provided us with a significant self-learning opportunity that we likely would not have been able to otherwise pursue. So with that, I will just end that I think the main highlight of the plenary was creating a learning-centric and learning-focused program and having our awardees really show up and demonstrate to the community what they were able to accomplish scientifically, but also by sharing what they didn't know how to do. It opened the door for further collaboration and kind of scientific learning together. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Annie. Also, just a quick shout out to Megan for rescuing the slides. Much appreciated. And so up next, we are going to be switching to Susan Shingledecker, who is going to cover the closing plenary for us. Susan, take it away.
Sorry, quickly, Allison, do you want me to keep sharing? Just checking.
I was going to reshare.
Okay, great.
Okay, cool. Great.
Thanks, everyone. Susan Shingledecker, ESIP Executive Director. So I had the real privilege of giving our closing plenary. Oftentimes we do a state of ESIP, but because we've moved our annual meeting to the summertime, it gave me a chance to talk and reflect on a topic that I'm pretty passionate about, and that is leveraging cross-sector partnerships and how we as a community can do more if we can have more effective partnerships across the different sectors. Because as I think you all know, we can create solutions that are not possible by working together. We'll create solutions that would not be possible that by one person alone doing the effort. So I took a bit of a risk and I went in the direction of using an analogy of the Wizard of Oz. I started off with thinking about Dorothy and how Dorothy lands in Oz, and she's very confused. She's very alone. She doesn't know where she's going. She's looking for home, or what I said, a home. Because many people often refer to ESIP as I found my people, I found my earth science data home. Dorothy sets off on the yellow brick road in search of the wizard who is going to give her all the answers. And she doesn't do her journey alone. She's joined by the wizard, or sorry, by the Tin Man, the Scarecrow, and the Lion. And each of them are looking for something different, but yet they undertake this journey together. But when they get to the wizard doesn't solve their problems. The wizard sends them back out to do more work. And it is by working together and leveraging the strengths of each other that they actually solve each other's problems and find what they all need. So that was kind of my metaphor of ESIP. Our takeaways for this were, when you're working in partnership with others, be curious. Ask questions, right? And curiosity is one of the core values of ESIP. Allow others to join you on your journey. Find your Tin Man, your Scarecrow, I keep saying wizard, your Tin Man, your Scarecrow, your Lion. Understand others' limitations and motivations. So we talked a lot about business models and the business models of the different sectors and how that enables different skills and different agility in partnership. Don't be discouraged by setbacks or those creepy flying monkeys, and then lean into the power of team. And form these teams that you can come back to time and time again throughout your career whenever you're facing different challenges. Since ESIP is an organization of organizations, we like to think about partnership, but we do know that the work of ESIP happens at the individual level too. So we close the closing plenary with awards recognizing our Partner of the Year, Element 84, our Catalyst Award, Amy Barchaukis from Development Seed. Our President's Award was Dave Blodgett. And then finally, we ended with recognizing the Martha Mady. This year is Bob Chen, who has recently retired. And we look forward to celebrating with all of you and with them at the opening reception at our meeting in Asheville. Thank you.
Thanks, Susan. I'm definitely biased as a science writer, but I love the Wizard of Oz metaphor for ESIP. So shifting gears, we are going to have the breakout session highlights next. These will be a series of 2-minute lightning talks, and we've asked each presenter to provide information on how to learn more and how to get involved. So if you have questions, please share them in the Zoom chat, and we will be on the lookout there. All right, so first up, I believe we have Shelley Stahl.
Hello, ESIP friends. We're really excited. All of the co-chairs associated with COPDES are very excited to get the entire community reinvigorated around that connection between publishers, editors, and data repositories. Christina Rauffenfelder had put together a survey in order to find out what the most important topics were for the community. And through synthesis of that information, we're starting to whittle it down to what will be areas that we'll be looking at, not wanting to duplicate anybody's work, but highlighting partners and collaborations. So we hope you'll join us. We now have a monthly meeting. We've already had our first, and I hope you'll come and join us for the ones to come and see what's going on. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Shelley. All right, next up, we're talking drinking water justice with Emily.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Emily. I'm a data scientist at the Environmental Policy Innovation Center, and I'm presenting on behalf of our session, Advancing Drinking Water Justice, where we discussed the drinking water data landscape. And despite the importance of drinking water to human health, we actually don't have a comprehensive national map of who does and does not get water from a drinking water utility. This information is critical to understanding drinking water equity, so which communities suffer from poor drinking water quality, as well as directing funds for water infrastructure improvement projects, and also for emergency and resilience planning, which is becoming increasingly important with our changing climate. There are 17 states that have a publicly accessible database on who gets drinking water from who, but there are 33 states that either do not have a publicly accessible database or do not have one at all, which means that for these 33 states, we accurately can't say who has access to drinking water, and that data needs to be validated. We at EPIC are working with Oregon Water Futures to validate that data in Oregon as our focal area, and that includes talking with water utilities, so showing them our provisional boundaries, asking if it's right, and then correcting it if it's not, so we can have the most accurate data available. And also talking with community members, so asking them, do you know where your drinking water comes from? And in the event that they don't, show them how to find out and check if their water is safe to drink or not. During our session, we also had a lot of really great discussions about how others within the ESIP community have done creative crowdsourcing or community science to fill data gaps. There are lots of parallels with iNaturalist and GBIF as really great examples of successful community science and also methods for working with sensitive data. And moving forward, we're interested in learning from others on methods for taking local data and rolling it up into a national database. And how to do that with inter and intra-agency collaboration. So please reach out. Thank you for the time.
Awesome, really inspiring work. And next up, we will be talking about federal data strategies. So Leslie, take it away.
Thanks, Allison. I'm Leslie Shee. I'm at the U.S. Geological Survey, and I co-convened this session with Megan Orlando. This session was a third that we've convened with the federal data strategy theme, one at the July 2023 ESIP meeting and one this past fall with a smaller group. This meeting's theme was a great fit for continuing our discussion. We took the time to explore what data ethics and trust mean in relation to government science data. One point was that the data and information produced by agencies can be seen as a public trust itself, where a public trust is public property which belongs to the whole of the people, which I thought was a cool idea. Our speakers were Raleigh Martin from the NSF, Eli Holmes from NOAA Fisheries, and Viv Hutchison from the USGS, who gave ideas on improving interagency implementations, including the desire for more formalized joint funding arrangements and coordination in investments. They also shared information about where practitioners can go for guidance on releasing data under the relatively new governmental public access plans. Both the speakers and the audience contributed ideas for the future, such as sharing existing data agreements as examples, discussing approaches for releasing newer types of data, and contract and grants examples. We heard that it would be useful for both broader conversations with more participants as well as smaller working conversations to solve specific problems. So Megan and I will be working to continue this discussion with roughly quarterly frequency. Please get in touch with me if you want to join or have ideas for future topics. I will share a URL in the chat with many sites and resources mentioned in our session so far. Thanks.
Thank you, Leslie. Behind the scenes secret, this is the most popular session in Sketch, so definitely make sure to catch the full playlist on YouTube. So next up, we have a video recording from our Caring with and About Data session. This is Bruce Wilson.
Hi, I'm Bruce Wilson, and I was a co-organizer of the session Caring with and About Data. As you can see, this slide does contain lots of links. If you'd like to have those to work with, then the bit.ly shortcut 2024 ESIP CARE or the QR code you see will take you there. This session was an introduction to the CARE principles: collective benefit, authority to control, responsibility, and ethics. Our goal was to help people get a better sense of these principles and what these principles might mean for them. I'd like to thank the three panelists. Andrew Martinez from the University of Arizona led off and provided an introduction to the CARE principles and ways they could be applied. Aaron Hester from the University of California, Merced provided a perspective on the CARE principles in the context of a NASA-funded field campaign in South Africa. And Ruth Dewar from the Ronin Institute provided information about what the ESIP Sustainable Data Cluster has been doing in this area. We had a great discussion, and there's lots of valuable resources that were identified as we move forward with CARE, several of which are in the notes document that I've linked to from this slide. The Sustainable Data Management Cluster is working with the Collaboratory for Indigenous Data Governance on a white paper about implementing the CARE principles, and my understanding is this paper should be submitted shortly. There's also a workshop coming up in Tucson in April, and the information here should help you find more information about that. If you'd like to follow up, the information on the right side of the slide covers at least some of the possible venues where you can get more information and follow up. So thanks much, and I look forward to more incoming meetings. Hi, I'm Bruce Wilson, and I was a co-organizer of the session
All right.
Caring with and about data.
Well, hopefully I can skip past the slide, but as we're getting ready, I will figure that out. And we've got Carolina on deck, who's going to kick off a three-part series of talks that were all about the ocean decade. So Carolina, take it away.
Okay, great. Hi, good afternoon. I'm Carolina Barris-Gonzalez, one of the co-chairs of the Marine Data Cluster, along with Matthew Biddle and Joseph Gum. And like Allison said, I'm going to be introducing the first of 3 sessions that we hosted in coordination with the Semantic Harmonization Cluster, the Semantic Technologies Committee, and the Schema.org cluster. This series of sessions and this kind of big collaboration came about as a follow-up of the summer meeting session that the Marine Data Cluster hosted, which was called ESIP and the Ocean Decade, Efforts and Opportunities to Engage. At that session, we uncovered a lot of areas to expand and share efforts related to the Ocean Decade happening across the ESIP community. And that led to a series of cross-cluster calls with the Semantic Harmonization Cluster, and that expanded to these sessions. So I'm going to briefly describe the agenda for the first session, which was a general introduction, then hand it over to Gary, who's going to cover the second session, which was a deeper dive into the topic focusing on trust. And then I'll return to the agenda of the third session, which was about paths forward towards implementation, and conclude with our current wins and our next steps. So session 1 was towards, the title of it was Towards Digital Federations for Marine Data for Societal Benefit, Trust, Pluralism, and Multilateralism during the UN Ocean Decade. We started hearing from Adam Shepard, who gave us an introduction to Schema.org and how Science on Schema.org, or SOSO, enables actionable metadata for scientific data. Pierluigi Buttigieg showcased Otis as a platform utilizing Schema.org to create a federated data network, and Doug Fills gave us some deeper insight into how Otis works. Karen Stocks presented work being done by the Ocean Decade project called DEWS, which is Deep Ocean Observing Strategy. And Kate Rose explained her proposed Ocean Decade action of working to make the popular CMAX vocabulary more fair. And we ended with Marshall Ma, who offered a perspective from the Semantic Technologies Committee about how semantics play a role throughout the data lifecycle and opportunities for collaboration within ESIP. And so I think I'm over time, but I'm going to hand it over to Gary, and I will see you in about 2 minutes.
Thank you, Carolina. I'm Gary Birdcross, and I helped organize this second session on ocean data, which was a panel to discuss the issues of trustworthy data networks like Otis. Besides myself, Bob Downs, Marshall Ma, Chen Ho Lee, and Pierre Buttigieg were on the panel. And the panel noted that there are many principled, fair, and trust approaches for things like data and metadata repositories. The Year of Ocean Science 2023, for example, is relevant for trust work. You can also see some of the trust principles from transparency to technology in the image on this slide presentation at the bottom right. And it's worth noting that 4 of the 5 of these factors are social in nature. And the user group, for example, experience leads to trust, but there are also dynamic and complexity issues to manage, such as data changing. Integration still poses challenges for cooperating heterogeneous data networks. Some of the takeaways towards solutions include recognizing that it is important to understand how trust is earned and how it's continually validated. Rich metadata is a central player in this. Otis provides a number of lessons on this, starting with basics and building a metadata foundation using simple but well-founded things like was mentioned before, scienceandschema.org, SOSO, for documentation such as provenance of data. This helps to grow a trusted data ecosystem and help build understanding and teamwork. And there are many more examples from Otis. For example, Otis practices include collection agreements and policies supporting collaborative solutions. These are needed for better data to be deposited, as well as documenting architecture and tool design. Otis partners have complete ownership and control and can choose which metadata they would like to share using a careful selection of data formats and metadata that they also apply that is appropriate for the involved communities. The panel also agreed that we need some more automated assistance to keep trust. Using AI or machine learning, such as in the recommender system, is one example of many tools needed. Carolina provided some ways to keep in contact and be involved. For example, the semantic harmonization cluster is just starting work to align CMEX vocabularies with Suite and Envo. And now back to Carolina.
Great, thanks, Gary. So in session 3, we had our final round of presentations, which introduced some implementation efforts. John Kuntz showed us the yams.net tool, which facilitates vocabulary term harmonization. Karen Stocks showcased the Decoder project, which is a metadata extension for deep ocean data, and Doug Fills gave us more details on the Otis implementation of that. So I want to touch on our current wins from this effort, which first and foremost was just the connections and the opportunities for connections made during the session itself, both in discussion as well as in the chat. And second, after the sessions, groups have already started reaching out for inclusion in the Otis network, including IUS. And IUS is actually scheduled for next week, a follow-up to work through getting data sets in a single data set into Otis. So we hope that people who engage with these sessions will expand these efforts and follow suit. Like Gary mentioned, Kate Rose is continuing her work with the CMEX, with harmonizing the CMEX vocabulary, working closely with the semantic harmonization cluster. And hopefully the group interest in these projects will help invigorate this process, which frankly can be a little grueling. And that said, it's the intention that this general collaboration will lessen the load, by opening these pathways for others to engage with the expertise available in the community. So to conclude, the Ocean Decade is an exciting opportunity to connect data management practices that we all know and love with a global impact, to have more meaning. And it's great and not surprising that the ESIP community would be heavily involved at that nexus. So please visit us at some of the upcoming calls found on the ESIP community calendar. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Carolina, and thank you, Gary. It's very exciting to see so much cross collaboration happening. So next up, we've got some more collaboration happening, this time in the area of natural disasters. So Maggie, you're up next.
Thank you. Let's see here. So I think the main takeaway from our breakout session, which was entitled Trusted Data Sources and Resources for Decision-Making and Situational Awareness, Tools for Disasters, is that the Disaster Lifecycle Cluster is starting what we're calling the Trusted Data Now initiative. What we're doing is trying to compile a list of resources and services for the disasters community. And we started by compiling input from our participants, and that is linked there under the context. So I guess I forgot to mention, I'm Maggie Glasgow. I'm one of the co-chairs of the cluster along with Dave Jones. And we did have a really great talk by Phil Balin, who sort of started us on this path down let's collect some information for people that are working within the disaster response or planning or people that are within the community. He's been asking us for probably 10 years to see if we might be able to put together this information. So we're very excited to be working on this Trusted Data Now initiative, and are planning to have more information for you in the summer meeting in North Carolina. So I think with that, I'll go ahead and close. There's all sorts of information there on our slide in case you want to join us in our cluster telecons and look at that worksheet that we started. And if you have any other questions, just let Dave or me know. Thank you.
Thanks, Maggie. Next up, Dave.
Well, thanks. Hi, everybody. I appreciate that. Thanks, Maggie, for that that great overview. In the wildfire cluster, we talked about the Wildfire Commission report. It's a big report that came out from the administration. They had a lot of priorities that were identified, and some of those priorities include two areas that we focused on for our discussion during the session. One was supporting collaboration, and the other one was modernizing tools for informed decision making. So we had a great conversation, and what we really, I think, sort of zeroed in on was kind of aiming for Asheville for the summer meeting and seeing if we couldn't connect some of the Wildfire Commission report objectives that we talked about with localization and trying to get perhaps a local fire chief, an engineering firm, perhaps even an insurance sector representative to talk about how they use trusted data, particularly in the wildfire sector, to help communities become more resilient, prepared, and to respond better. And to focus the cluster on making sort of small advancements that can show how ESIP can advance collaboration and data awareness in this space. In other words, what can ESIP do that is unique? And a number of people said during the session, data, right? We focus on data. We have had trusted data initiatives for a while going on. And so if we can identify these trusted data sources, identify how these organizations use them to make better decisions for setting insurance rates, for responding to these wildfires, then I think we can set something off going off into the future where the wildfire cluster, disaster lifecycle cluster, and other ESIP clusters can get together. Even the education cluster was open towards perhaps talking about wildfires or getting the teachers that attend to come to the wildfire session. So all in all, it was a really fabulous conversation, which is what ESIP's all about. We look forward to the monthly meetings. Just to let everybody know, we have them on the second Thursday of every month, the second one, from 4 to 5 Eastern time. And we hope that you all join us then. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Dave. All right, so our next series is covering some of the tools behind the scenes of Earth Science data, and we've got Kyla Richards up next.
Hello, everyone. I'm going to give the report out for the Biological Data Standards Cluster session on continuing development of the guidelines for the Biological Data Standard Primer. So this QR code here will take you to the product we've made. It offers guidance for data managers on data standardization. And the session that we had this meeting was a working session where we generated the potential content and discussion around the structure of the next section in our primer we're working on, which is called Provide Context and Understandability to Your Data. So this part of this primer dives deeper into metadata standards, including EML, ISO 19115, and MIXIS. And then our main takeaways were that it would be beneficial to add some sort of introduction before diving into these guidelines, and specifically adding more information on who would benefit from using this primer. Some more feedback we got in this working group was perhaps a way to engage with people who have questions or feedback about the structure of the primer. Right now we're using GitHub, but there might be other ways that would encourage more engagement. And all in all, we found our session attendees to be engaged and interested in our work, and we're really happy to see new faces and people who don't normally attend our cluster meetings. So with that, I'd like to plug our biological data standards cluster. Our next meeting will be March 7th, and I will put some links in the chat if you're interested in engaging with this. So thank you.
Great. Next up, we're talking AI with Sanjana.
Hello everyone, I'm Sanjana, research assistant at George Mason University. Today, I would like to give a quick summary of our session, Demystifying Artificial Intelligence for Earth Science and Bridge the Gap for Non-Technical Scientists. The meeting was organized by Johnson, Associate Professor at George Mason University, and Nicoletta, Research Scientist at University of Washington. So, moving back to the session started off with introducing GeoSmart, educational framework designed to teach advanced machine learning techniques for geoscience through open tutorials and practical training. These trainings materials help researchers build skills to tackle challenges in geoscience using machine learning. Moving forward, the session discussed about GeoWeaver, a workflow management software designed to help researchers manage their data processing workflows. This software helps researchers with effectively sharing, reproduce, and collaborate on AI workflows without much worrying about the technical details. Lastly, in the session, we spoke about Snowwater equivalent use case, which was built on GeoWeaver platform. If you are interested in learning machine learning techniques, you can join our ESIP ML cluster session held every third Friday. Thank you.
Thanks. Next up, we are moving on to the air quality cluster.
All right. Hi, I'm Steve Young. I'm the co-chair of the air quality cluster. So we did kind of a workshopping session exploring some of the current platforms and their usefulness for understanding air quality issues. And what we found was current platforms are useful for developing a broad understanding of air quality concepts, like what is PM 2.5? Why should I care about PM 2.5? But we can also see that people need help in establishing a context to get more reliable responses from the platforms. And at the topic of prompt engineering, how can you do better, more useful prompts to get better results that you can put more confidence in? And we think we're at a stage where we really want to do some pilot testing with interested user communities, especially smaller communities that are now concerned, perhaps newly concerned about air quality because of wildfire smoke, for example. So we'd love to have more participants in our air quality cluster. And as chance would have it, our next meeting is tomorrow afternoon at 4 p.m. Eastern. And we'd love to have you join the cluster and get involved. But I think it's an exciting, rapidly changing space and a tremendous amount of potential. So thank you.
I also know there were a handful of songs and poems that came out of that session.
Yes,
as
the
well.
creativity is fun too.
Yes, definitely. So up next, we've got Michelle, and she's going to dive into some of the cloud computing work.
Hi, everyone. So in our session this January, we wanted to have a split between education and then also a space for people to come and ask their own questions and provide their own use cases and say, this is where I'm at, what's my next steps? And so the first half of it was focused on some experts in the community sharing their own use cases. And then the second half was that space for discussion. In that first half, I started the session with a brief overview of cloud-native geospatial formats. A more detailed version of this talk can be found on the Cloud Native Geo YouTube. And then we also have a guide written version of that on our website if you're interested in diving more into the details of cloud-native geospatial formats. And then once I finished that, we had our 4 speakers give specific use cases of either their use of a cloud-native geospatial format or a transition from like an archival either workflow or system to the cloud. So Nikki Tabaldi from Podak gave a great overview of migrating a data processing workflow to the AWS cloud. Then Raphael Hagen from Carbon Plan gave a use case of using Kerchunk to make it easier to use climate data in the cloud. Kyle Mann from Hobu then gave an overview of cloud optimized point clouds and an example of work they're doing for improved LiDAR storage, specifically a case study with the Forest Service. And then our final speaker was Kyle Barron, who spoke about GeoParquet, the benefits, and then gave a specific use case of data visualization improvements using GeoParquet. And then the second half, we had some space. It ended up being more people asking questions instead of bringing their own use cases. And that's something that I hope that is can be have that space in the future to have more engaging discussions about people's actual use cases. But that was our session. The QR code here is to the Cloud Native Geo Slack. And from there, I can send off many resources there. So thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks for sharing. So up next, we've got Douglas Rao, our ESIP Vice President.
Thanks, Allison. Today I'm going to talk about our session's joint session between information quality cluster and data readiness cluster, really looking at the intersections about data quality for AI-ready open data. And the session really focuses on how can we, as a community, work towards a common practice to provide those quality information that help and enable the AI and machine learning developers to develop those trusted applications with earth science data. And the key takeaway there is really that data quality can be context-based, which can make it really general categorization challenging for different diverse applications for AI developments. And on the right side, if you see the figures, that when we're talking about data quality as a bridge between the repository and the developers, that it has like 3 different levels. And the basic level is the foundational data quality, which talks a lot about the completeness, about metadata and the documentations. And then the median level is the scientific and factual information, quality information about data set, whether how good those data sets are. And then the top level is the contextual data quality information, which can really be use case driven and use case specific. That can be quite challenging to provide from a data repository point of view. And again, the second thing is that maybe it's not surprising that metadata and the metadata senders would be critical to facilitate those actionable quality information for the developers use those open geospatial data for the AI application development processes. And the last one, we see the need of building those community and connections between the data repositories and developers who really make advancements in the data quality categorization, the provision to facilitate the AI workflows in that case. And if you want to learn more and then get involved in the process, join the data readiness cluster on 3rd Tuesday, 1 p.m. Eastern time, or contact me directly, or join the information quality cluster on the 4th Tuesday of each month on 2 p.m. Eastern time. I believe the next meeting will be next week. John is also on the call. It's the chair of the information quality cluster.
Thank you, Douglas. We have just a handful left of our lightning talks. Up next, we've got Joan from the physical samples cluster.
Hi, everyone. I'm one of the co-chairs of this cluster along with Val Stanley and Andrea Tomer. And our session was on community and technical needs to facilitate sample citation. And we started off the session with an overview of some of our recent cluster outputs. And this includes a flyer and postcard that was designed by our community fellow, Natalie Raya. And this outlines 4 basic steps to publishing open earth science samples. And we've also, over the past couple of years, developed a more extensive scientific author guide for publishing open research using physical samples. And this is really interdisciplinary. And so one of our goals is to go through the ESIP endorsement process for this author guide. Then for much of the session, we gathered feedback from attendees on their dream or ideal system for sample discovery, tracking, and credit. And we did this through both Jamboards and discussion. And some of the main takeaways from this were that first, the current publication landscape really does not enable tracking use of samples for provenance and credit. And this is something that we want to continue working towards as a cluster. And this is reflected in some of our outputs and goals. And then in terms of the solutions, there are a number of community solutions that we identified, and they all really involve promoting and coordinating across different groups on standard practices, and spanning from individual researchers to publishers and data repositories and indexers. And then in terms of technical solutions, we really came to the conclusion that we need to automate as much as possible, and including tools for field collection of samples and capturing metadata and identifiers out in the field, more automated persistent identifier registration, either upon field collection or upon submission to a data system, cross-linking related persistent identifiers, automated metadata exchange, and also generating complex citations for large numbers of samples. So we're incorporating feedback into our cluster outputs, and also we're working on a collaborative paper on this topic. So we welcome additional feedback on all of these activities, including our author guidelines, which I mentioned. We're planning to go through the ESIP endorsement process. And so you can join the cluster. We have telecons on the 4th Tuesday. I think our next one is next Tuesday at 1 p.m. Pacific time or 4 p.m. Eastern. So yeah, that's it.
Thanks, Joan. Next up, we've got Jonathan talking about virtual collections of data.
Hi, my name's Jonathan Blythe. I work for the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, and I hosted this session called Citing Virtual Collections of Data. Really, the data that we were talking about in this session is data collected from Alaska, Pacific, Atlantic, Gulf of Mexico, and Hawaii main islands over the past 50 years by the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management. And what is the best way that we can cite the data for the users of this database that I manage, the ESP Hub? And the reason why we want to cite data, obviously, is to improve the credibility of the science that BOEM produces. And one of the tools that I explored is to use the ORE, or the Object Reuse and Exchange Standard, to improve the actionability of data citations, and also to aggregate many resources that are available through the National Centers for Environmental Information that have been archived there over the past 50 years, and to make them more relevant to the context that we think our end users want to see. So it's rolled up to, say, like the entire Gulf of Mexico for a marine mammal survey effort that we funded, or over a period of 40 years of aerial surveys of marine mammal research in the Arctic. And one thing we'd like to explore moving forward, this is work we'll continue in the Discovery Cluster, is to look at, okay, so we've kind of come up with a solution for within one repository how to identify virtual collections. Can we apply this when there's two repositories? Like in this case, there are data hosted by the Marine Fisheries Service and NCEI, and can we identify the relationships between those data sets? They are the same. There might be a lineage there. And I think we can extend this ORE standard to that as well. So please come and join us, and we'll explore that and other use cases for data set discovery. Thank you.
Just a couple left now. We're returning to Shelley Stahl for our next highlight.
Related to the last speaker, we have been working on these concepts around complex citations, which are collecting a set of data sets that are related. Our primary use cases are having to do with when you want to cite more than 40, 50, 100, 1,000 digital objects for peer-reviewed publication. But you could, in fact, create a collection for any reason, as was described. So I think we should probably work together. This particular work started out at an AGU data fair back in 2019, and yeah, hi Jonathan, and has now been introduced here at ESIP, and it does cross multiple domains. So we did take it to RDA as part of the RDA ESIP Earth and Space and Environmental Science interest group. So we'll continue to connect ESIP and our colleagues at RDA on this topic. We are kicking off meetings every 2 weeks. Watch very soon for those invites. And if you're not a member of that particular RDA group, that's the listserv, please join. Jonathan, I hope you're there. And it would be really great to have more folks thinking about this. We just had a planning meeting, and to Jonathan's point, when you create a collection, not all of the ways you cite those pieces, those handles, those arcs within a DOI, many repositories subdivide based on a handle or an arc, and you don't know what those creators are. The metadata for the handle won't necessarily use all of that or have all of that metadata. How do you make sure that you're giving proper traceability and attribution at the same time? So we're going to dive into those discussions and make sure we have a good answer on the other side. So please join us and stay tuned as we give the next update.
Thanks, Shelley. Next up, we've got Leslie talking about international collaborations.
Hi everyone. Sorry, I can't turn my camera on. But this kind of follows on from what Shelley just said. And so we explored ESIP's past and current connections to the Research Data Alliance and a proposal to form an ES, Earth, Space and Environmental Science Community of Practice. It's very clear we've got a long history of contributions from ESIP to RDA, and I'll just hint it's a pity that they're invisible. Many are invisible. And we even have the ESIP RDA Earth, Space and Environmental Sciences interest group. There was general encouragement, I think wholeheartedly, from the community that we should continue these connections and to go ahead with the Earth, Space and Environmental Science Community of Practice proposal. And so for RDA plenary in May, we have submitted a proposal for that. And we've also, just because it's still going, submitted a session for the ESIP interest group. And I'd like to throw out a call to everyone who's got a cluster in ESIP who would like to advertise on the international platform what their cluster is doing. I've got some spaces in our session program for some lightning talks from members of this of ESIP overall. So I think I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. So that wraps up all of our lightning talks. So now we are shifting it over and we're going to pass it to two of our excellent ESIP community fellows. They've been charged with helping us today to see the meeting through their eyes, and that's however they chose to interpret it. So first up is Natalie, who is going to highlight a session that she also helped to organize.
Thanks, Allison. So like Allison said, I'm Natalie Rea. I'm a 2024 ESIP Community Fellow and a postdoc based in the School of Information at the University of Arizona. I co-convened this session with Christina Braunfelder, Program Manager for Open Science at AGU. And the motivation for this session was to engage in kind of a broad and method agnostic discussion on the ways in which analytical labs can empower researchers to produce and publish fair data, particularly by focusing on places where time, effort, and data education barriers for these researchers can be reduced. And so we had 5 speakers, and they presented on several ongoing efforts in this space, including the development of software tools like Sparrow that facilitate cross-domain coordination at the individual lab level, and approaches such as the Fair Island Project and StravoSpot that facilitate fair data capture in the field, to global initiatives like One Geochemistry, and research coordination networks such as Nocturne that enable some of those cross-sector partnerships that Susan talked about in the closing plenary. After the talks, we spent about 25 minutes of Jamboard visioning, where we posed questions to session attendees such as, what are the biggest challenges to making the data collection stage of the data lifecycle fair? Who are the key possible change agents in this space? For example, instrument manufacturers, individual scientific labs, disciplinary groups, repositories, et cetera, and how can we better engage with them? And finally, is there a role for ESIP in this, either in the form of a new cluster or with existing cluster efforts? And so on the slide, I've highlighted some themes and takeaways that surfaced. And I'll highlight this last point, which is kind of a recognition that there's many groups and initiatives working on these issues already. And our session attendees were most excited about pursuing efforts that would better connect these existing initiatives. And as a ESIP community fellow, I'll say it's been very meaningful to now be here a year later after my first involvement in the January meeting last year. It was my first time getting involved with ESIP. So I'm very grateful to be a part of this cohort. Thanks.
Thanks, Natalie. Next up, we've got Lauren.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Allison. I'm Lauren Holian. I'm a community fellow for the Open Science Data Cluster, and this was my first ESIP meeting, which was a really great experience. And I feel like this was the first time I really understood the depth of the cross-disciplinary nature of ESIP, and I really got to learn a lot. By the end of the meeting, I feel like I had just seen and been able to participate in a real scientific community that was challenging themselves to engage with data ethics. And I say challenging because I was able to attend several sessions and assist with different sessions. And I feel that the community did not shy away from getting in the nitty-gritty of the complexity of data ethics and really trying to understand all the aspects of those issues. So my main takeaways were really big 3 that were unifying across all the sessions, regardless of the concepts that they were actually trying to tackle. First, I really saw that we grasp and understand that trust is multifaceted and long-term. This stemmed a lot from the variety of topics being covered and the concerns that were being raised, but also the diversity of perspectives in the panels themselves and even the chats. I really enjoyed seeing the participation and engagement from the audience members and how they were able to bring key points that were also really insightful. So both the back and forth there was really fruitful, and I really enjoyed getting to see that. The next takeaway would be that equity requires planning and thoughtfulness at all stages. I think ESIP really highlighted this for me in a way I hadn't fully grasped, in that in order to get to those stages where data and science is really equitable and open, we need to plan across time, and it's not just at one stage, it's across all the stages. This was highlighted in multiple sessions where they were talking about planning with communication, planning with communities before you even start the data collection process, all through to how we handle the data, the longevity of the data, and how we discuss the data or the terms we use. And the last big one for me was that progress requires collaboration and responsibility in a way that I think ESIP is trying to always promote at its core. And this, I feel, was just really exemplary throughout, and lots of different people were coming together and deeply engaging with data ethics in a way that I haven't necessarily seen in other meetings. So this meeting truly felt unique, and I'm really grateful that I got to be a part of it and continue to be a part of the community.
Thank you. It's always great to hear from our ESIP fellows. So Lauren, those takeaways, kind of set us up beautifully for our next gathering, which will be in July in Asheville, where I think we will definitely continue some of those conversations. So to wrap it up today, bless you, Drew. Thanks, everyone. We've had a really great conversation in chat, and we will be on the lookout for those conversations to continue. So the way that you can continue contributing and being a part of ESIP varies. It's a little bit of a choose your own adventure. So thank you to everyone who contributed today. And before we go, here are a couple of different ways that you can get involved. So ESIP is active all year round. You are welcome to join one of the existing collaborations. There were a lot of invitations for those today. There's no need to RSVP. You can see a call on the ESIP community calendar, which is found on our website, and you just click to join. You can also consider applying for ESIP lab support, which is more than just small grant funding. The lab really helps projects by exposing and building collaborations around those projects. And our RFP will be coming out later this spring. So you can also encourage your organization to become an ESIP partner, and there's some benefits there. You could also apply or encourage others to apply as a community fellow, or right now we have our Raskin Scholarship, which is open and available as an award to graduate students. And lastly, over the last 25 plus years, ESIP is turning 26 this year. We've had thousands of individuals who have contributed in numerous ways to build this community. And we invite you all to continue to contribute in a way that is most useful to you. And we thank you for your efforts, both today and throughout the whole rest of the year. And finally, if you are not already subscribed, kind of the best way to stay in tune with what's happening in ESIP is to join our ESIP update mailing list that comes out every week. It's just one quick newsletter summarizing everything that we're doing, as well as some highlights from across the broader earth science data community. And that brings our webinar to a close today. So thank you again to all of our speakers and all of our session leaders who helped us take this most recent ESIP meeting to the next level. I would also like to take a moment to thank our federal agency sponsors, that's NASA, NOAA, and the USGS. And thank you all for being here today. As a reminder, this recording will be made available on our ESIP YouTube channel soon, which you can get following the QR code over here and sign up for the ESIP updates. Thank you all.
Thanks, Allison and Megan.
Thank you, everyone.
Take care. Bye-bye.